before the midterm elections. But are they losing sight of 2018 by focusing too much on 2020?
We've got to have leaders who have vision, who will really talk about the future, not just criticize Trump and the Republicans.
I'm not waiting. I'm running against Donald Trump today, every single day, okay?
We begin this morning with the president temporarily ditching his insistence that there was no collusion with Russia. Instead, he's now insisting that the Trump Tower meeting with the Russian representative was, quote, totally legal. Well, we're going to ask the question, is he right? And I have a great team here to help break all of it down. But first, I want to explain exactly what we're talking about. This morning, we expect special counsel Robert Mueller. He is digging through the legal implications of the president's latest tweets. And we're going to do the same thing. The president, he tweeted on Sunday, quote, the fake news is reporting a complete fabrication, that I am concerned about the meeting my wonderful son Donald had in Trump Tower. This was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally legal and done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. I did not know about it. So the president is making two primary claims here in trying to defend the meeting back in 2016. First, the meeting amounted to a kind of opposition research that is, quote, totally legal and done all the time. The second claim is that the meeting, quote, went nowhere, implying that because of that, there was no crime. Well, here's the president's attorney, Jay Sekulow, on ABC just yesterday.
The question is, how would it be illegal? I mean, the real question here is, would a meeting of that nature constitute a violation, the meeting itself constitute a violation of the law? And what you have is a situation, and I've said this well over a year, you have to look at what laws, rules, regulations, statutes are purportedly violated here.
So he's been saying that for well over a year. Well, over a year ago, he said the opposite about that meeting in Trump Tower, remember? It was all about adoptions. I didn't hear anybody talking about babies this weekend, and there are some potentially relevant laws. For example, U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Title 11, Chapter 1, quote, a foreign national shall not directly or indirectly make a contribution or donation of money or other thing of value or expressly or impliedly promise to make a contribution or a donation in connection with any federal, state, or local election. And, quote, no person shall knowingly solicit, accept, or receive from a foreign national any contribution or donation prohibited by this section. Of course, the president is right that opposition research is done all the time. The potential crime is getting that research from a foreign national, like the Russians who attended that meeting. And legal experts have argued that dirt on Hillary Clinton could be considered a thing of value under this statute. As for whether anyone, quote, knowingly accepted it, we should just look at the June 2016 email from Rob Goldstone, the publicist who set up the meeting, in which he wrote, quote, the Crown Prosecutor of Russia offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary Clinton and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. Don Jr. wrote back, quote, if that's what you say, I love it. In the second part of the president's tweet, he insists the meeting went nowhere, seemingly indicating that because of that, nothing illegal could have happened. It's the same defense we heard from his son last year.
There wasn't really follow-up because there was nothing there to follow up. There was some puffery to the email, perhaps to get the meeting to make it happen. And, you know, in the end, there was probably some bait and switch about what it was really supposed to be about. And so, you know, there is nothing there.
Puffery, bait and switch. But here's the thing. If you're going to argue conspiracy, the agreed-upon crime doesn't actually have to take place. You can be convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, for example, without actually killing someone. All you need to provide is prove conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people, an unlawful objective, and an overt act to try and reach that objective. So a meeting certainly could qualify. And we know at this point there have been many lies told about why this meeting took place. I want to go to NBC's Peter Alexander in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. Okie doke, Peter. What do we make about the president's tweets over the weekend? Because he went after Mueller and the media again. And we also have to remember Hope Hicks, who left the White House the day after she sat down and spoke to members of the government. She was spotted with the president. And those who have spoken to Hope has said, listen, as much as she could miss the the president, she knows she cannot go near him, she cannot touch him, she cannot speak to him, because she was the one who dictated what the president said from Air Force One about that June meeting in Trump Tower.
Yeah, she was sort of the intermediary, right? The president doing the dictating. She helped communicate the message as it would be put out publicly there. So let's start about Hope Hicks. As you bring her up, obviously, she left back in February, one day, as you noted, after she sat down with members of the House Intelligence Committee. Hicks, the president's former communications director, someone he views almost as a daughter, joining him this weekend for his trip to Ohio, the raucous rally he held there, part of a series of campaign stops he's going to be hosting over the next several months. But this meeting was significant for a variety of reasons. One is if the president met privately with Hope Hicks, that could be potentially problematic, and a reason why the special counsel would want to sit down with her again to find out any new details. Did she perhaps coordinate with the president so they make sure they have their stories straight before he speaks to Robert Mueller, either in the form of oral or written questions? So that's the latest on Hope Hicks. We've reached out to the White House for any new details on what took place between the two on that plane, any conversations of any kind. Broadly about the president's frustrations, we've seen the frustration. Sarah Sanders recently saying he's rightfully frustrated by what they like to describe as the fake news media right now, but he also perhaps appears a bit fearful amid new reports that he is worried that his son, Donald Trump Jr., may have, perhaps not on purpose, he suggests, walked into some form of legal jeopardy. That Don Jr. could face real repercussions, consequences for hosting that meeting with those Russians back at Trump Tower last year. The president suggesting there's nothing to it, basically saying it's fake news reporting, saying it's a complete fabrication, that recent report over this weekend. But the bottom line is we have been witnessing him, while on vacation, hardly in vacation mode, lashing out increasingly frequently. The pace of his mistruths or lies has been growing in recent weeks and months, and it appears it's something up in the president's head. As one person said to me last week, this is something that's in his head, this Russia topic, and he can't erase it. Stephanie?
Well, Peter, the lies or mistruths might work for his base or Republicans who want air cover here. The question we need to dig into is, was the law broken? Because if it does, it don't matter how popular you are. I want to bring in my panel, Kim Wehle. She's a former assistant U.S. attorney and a professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law. My friend Bret Stephens is an op-ed columnist with the New York Times, and Jason Johnson is politics editor at theroot.com. Excellent table this morning. Kim, to you first. Bottom line this. Did DJ TJ, that's Donald Trump Jr., break the law by taking the meeting?
Listen, Stephanie, you did a terrific job laying out the law. I start teaching my students in a couple weeks, and I couldn't even do it as well as you did. I mean, we have not only a Code of Federal Regulations, but a United States statute passed by the United States Congress 3 different times that basically says we don't want foreign nationals mucking around in our elections. It's very broad. It does not require that they actually achieve some kind of benefit from a foreigner. Soliciting, meaning trying to get something of benefit from a foreign national, is verboten. It's against the law. So that's one thing. The second thing, you mentioned conspiracy. Robert Mueller has already indicted multiple members of the Russian intelligence community for hacking into servers and stealing voter information, to the extent to which that conspiracy could be added to by virtue of what happened here. We have potential conspiracy crime. We have a potential obstruction of justice because we have stuff that was covered up. And then, of course, we have a potential perjury charge by Don Jr. in connection with his testimony in Congress. So there's a broad range of wrongdoing here. The real question is, what are we going to do about it? I mean, Jay Sekulow said, is there a crime? Well, we're answering the question. I think yes. And then what's going to happen about it? I mean, is the American public going to tolerate this? We're putting children in jail because their parents committed misdemeanors at the borders, and then we've got this level of wrongdoing at the highest echelons of the office, which go to the heart of our democracy, and people are shrugging, and I think it's really, really dangerous to continue on this path.
Bret, why would the president be doing this? If it's about popularity and his base or the media, the Russia investigation isn't winning Trump any votes, and it's not losing Trump any votes. People feel the way they feel about it. But at the very least, what he did this weekend over Twitter could put him in greater legal jeopardy. So why do that?
Because it was stupid. Look,
technically speaking, because it was stupid. I got it.
Look, you can't always seek explanations for the president's behavior in some form of higher rationality. I mean, there is clearly a neurotic tic going on here. He is fulminating. This is obsessing his mind, and this is the risk for any administration of a president whose every stray thought goes onto Twitter, because some of those stray thoughts, I think, clearly amount to attempts to obstruct justice. So he is digging a legal hole for himself that's going to be very deep. The issue, however, is this. I agree with every word that Kim said, and you really did lay out the legal facts beautifully. But here's the other detail. Bob Mueller, according to Justice Department regulations, cannot indict the president. So the issue ends up being a political issue. Would Bob Mueller's a report from the special counsel lead Republicans in Congress to conclude that they have no recourse other than the constitutional one to impeach and convict the president for high crimes and misdemeanors? So if there is a higher rationality at play here, and that's always questionable with Trump, it's that he is speaking politically to other Republicans and the Republican base, not playing a legal game with the special counsel.
Okay, so those other Republicans who understand the legal game,
right? What
is more important to them, Robert Mueller's report, or how the public reads the president's misinformation?
Well, it depends on where you are as a Republican, right? If you're in a safe seat, all you care about is making sure the president's safe. If you're on the line, if you may be facing a blue wave, if you're somebody who might be connected to this one way or another, you're concerned about what the president is saying. And that's where I think the real problem is. The president it's not just sort of the neurotic tics that Bret is talking about, but he is consistently sort of conflating political and legal problems, which puts everybody who's trying to defend him in trouble. Even when we go back, remember the key thing about the whole adoptions is adoptions are connected to the Majeski Act, which are connected to sanctions, which means
it was never really about, even when they said it was about adoptions. Adoptions are code.
Exactly. That's like saying, oh, I'm going shopping for a car and I'm a getaway driver. Like, everybody knew that there was something else going on. So, to the degree that that also leads to it looking like there was collusion, it looking like they were getting material help, that's where the president gets everybody in trouble.
Okay, well, speaking of everybody being in trouble, let's stick with Don Jr., because, Kim, you have written in the past that Mueller could use Don Jr. as a way to get to the president. But Don Jr. ain't your normal consigliere to the president. It's his son. Do you really think that could happen?
Well, he's not protected by the pardon power. He's not protected by the impeachment clause, which I agree with Bret. There are DOJ guidance that suggests that couldn't indict a president. I think there's some ambiguity there, possibility.
But Don Jr.'s power base, his universe, his popularity, the reason everyone's inviting him to go hunting all around the world and speak and getting fees to speak greater than he ever imagined is because his father's the president.
Yeah, but I don't think Bob Mueller cares about that, and so he's not protected in that way. And the other piece to keep in mind is we've got these emoluments clause litigation going forward. Ooh. So we have two pieces: we've got his children, and we have his business empire. So if you can't get directly to the president, you can get to the things he holds very, very dearly to his heart here, and perhaps then there's some pressure on him to do something that's best for the American public. Which can, in my personal and professional view at this point, would be to step down, because he's not fit for office at this point.
Okay, well, I want to talk about something that's near to my heart, what Bret wrote about this weekend. Now, the president tweeted about the media. We know this, calling it the enemy of the people, dangerous and sick. You wrote a column this weekend titled, quote, "Trump will have blood on his hands, why he is responsible for something someone else might do." Walk us through this.
So,
I mean, that's a heavy. Those are heavy words.
At the end of May, I wrote a column saying that ABC was right to cancel Roseanne because of a racist tweet. I received a voicemail the next day. A man who sounded to me like white male, late middle-aged, slightly Southern accent, fantasizing about me and other journalists being killed, being murdered by people with AR-15s. Then that ended in a racist rant with the N-word used, I think, about a dozen times. And then "have a nice day" and "lover," and then he clicked off. That is the third time since the Trump phenomenon began that I have been violently threatened by by someone who's clearly a Trump supporter.
We should also remind our audience that you're conservative.
Yeah, well, but not a fan of the president, and I think that's what is key here. The only time I've been similarly threatened is by someone who later went to jail for supporting Hezbollah. So we take this very seriously. Now, I put that voicemail to one side for 4 weeks, and then the killing at Annapolis at the Capital Gazette, 5 journalists murdered there. And then you had the president going on about fake news. Now, I think when the president goes to his rallies and starts screaming about the fake news, the most he wants is for people to give CNN's Jim Acosta a middle finger. That's the emotion. But if 1,000 people are giving Jim Acosta a middle finger, some subset of that, say 10 people, are people like my caller. And then some subset of that are going to be people who are willing to take it to the next step. There is someone out there. We live in the age of the active shooter, and the president is goading them. He is inciting them. He is not saying get rid of this turbulent priest, but he's not a child who doesn't know that he's carrying a loaded gun. The blood will be on his hands the moment some whack job thinks that he is carrying out the instructions of the president and goes into a newsroom like the one behind us or the one in my news organization or yours and murders people.
I pray that you are wrong.
I do too.
But let's pretend that Bret isn't. Fast forward. Let's say something absolutely awful happens like that. Bret says the president will have blood on his hands. Will he? Or will the answer again be blame on many sides?
He'll take absolutely no responsibility for it. And that's the problem. And I not only do I empathize with Bret, but this is even more personal for me. I work at a college. I work at a college of primarily African-American students. So the kind of hostility that this president has raised, both against people of color and against journalists, is a direct threat. I got anthrax sent to me, fake anthrax sent to me once at my office, right? I've had threats against me dozens of times, both in person, and I'm going to Charlottesville this weekend for the 1-year anniversary of the march because I'm also a UVA alumni. So this is a serious issue, and the president doesn't care. And what's more problematic about that is the Republican Party doesn't care.
Okay, this is what I want to ask about. The Republican Party doesn't care. Jamie Dimon, for example, is a CEO who I think does a superb job. I know him quite well. And what always blows my mind is when I hear Jamie Dimon say things like, ignore what he tweets, stop listening to what he tweets, look at the policies are good.
Yeah, well,
when are we going to see leaders who know better, who know that they could not ever say or do things like that? It would cost them their jobs. They would fire anyone in their organizations if they said things like this. When are we going to start to see corporate and government leaders say, hold on a second?
Well, there are a few. There have been a few. Seth Klarman at Baupost and so on have been outspoken. But look, there's this sort of higher wisdom that says, oh, you should take the president seriously, but not literally. But maybe. But lots of people out there take him absolutely literally. And if you are the enemy of the American people, then the logical consequences, we have to deal severely with our enemy.
Let me just say one thing. Yeah. Seth Klarman did do an extraordinary thing, but Baupost is a private hedge fund. Tell me a CEO of a company who has customers or employees that span the political spectrum, that have the courage, the decency to say this is wrong and this is a threat to people. Because I don't know what CEO is doing that.
That's exactly it. They are not speaking up, and it will be too late should there be a national tragedy for them to speak up, or for those nice Republicans in Congress who have been sort of mutedly saying, well, we don't quite like what the president is saying. This is why you take a moral stand before the tragic event occurs.
And this is the other thing. We're going to have a Charlie Hebdo situation here. Without question. Without question. It is going to happen because of the behavior of this president. And what disgusts me about this,
don't let that be.
What particularly disgusts me about it is these are local reporters we're talking about who have great relationships. The vast majority of media
reporters.
Yeah, these are the local community reporters. And the Republicans, the Republican members of Congress, the Democrats usually complain about, the Republican members of Congress who turn a blind eye to that same local reporter that they knew in high school when she interned with them and is now working for the state paper. And that person may be under threat and they don't care about it. That is why this is a danger, not just to national security, but our very sovereignty and our Constitution.
You know, a conservative friend of mine wrote me after that column. He said, well, you know what, free speech goes both ways, and the press gives Trump such a hard time. I wrote him back. I said, look, the press has been giving presidents a hard time since the second Washington administration, all right? This is the first time that the president has answered. And by the way, when the president goes out, he's surrounded by a Praetorian Guard known as the Secret Service. When we go out in the streets with our children, with our families, we have nobody. This is a demagoguery that this country has never witnessed in its history.
You have Gian Ford, who's in Congress right now, who attacked a member of the press, and Paul Ryan, and no one else said anything about it. They could have kept him from being seated.
Body slammed him the day before the election, and he won. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Kim, thank you. And I got to thank my producer, Dave Murphy. He is the one who helped us lay out exactly what's at stake. All right.